Stay tuned. Stay tuned for your weekend break from the mind-controlling mainstream. An hour of resistance to complacency and the status quo. 60 minutes of grassroots edutainment for political, social, economic, and environmental justice. Voices of Dissent with sounds from the underground. Some truth and sanity after the lies of Limbaugh and Hannity. Here's your host, repping the have-nots against the have-plot, Douggie, the Abolitionist.
Yes, the rhythm, the rebel. Without a pause, I'm lowering my level. The hard rhymer, where you never been, I'm in. Doing styling, you know it's time to get deep. The enemy telling you to hear it.
I'm going to cancel that. I don't have time for that. So
well, that's what I was going to ask you, if you would, instead of having the press conference, continue with those members who have been waiting here for so long. And I think what I thought I originally heard was 5:30 rather than 5:15. So is it possible you could give us another 15 minutes to get to these members?
I have a foreign leader waiting in my office at 5:30. Okay, I've agreed to stay longer. It will be embarrassing if I keep this person waiting for a long period of time. I wasn't going to have a press conference. I was going to have a short press gaggle. I'm not going to do that. And I've assured you, I'm happy to come back here and answer more of your questions. I respect the committee, and we want to have a good working relationship with you. So I hope you'll understand that I'm already going to be late to my 5:30.
I do understand. We're late all the time, unfortunately. We're all pressed for time, and I do get it. However, I think I indicated early on that we would request or require that you come back at least 2 more times in the month of May. Is that something you're agreeing to?
No, Madam Chair, I find this to be, I have here every single time Jack Lew and other people came here. There's never been anybody that's been here more than 3 hours and 15 minutes. I've sat here for over 3 hours and 15 minutes. I've told you I'll come back. I just don't believe we're sitting here negotiating when I come back. We'll follow up with your office. How long would you like me to come back for next time? I've told you I'll accommodate you. I
appreciate that, and I appreciate your reminding us of the length of time other secretaries have been here. This is a new way, and it's a new day, and it's a new chair, and I have the gavel at this point. If you wish to leave, you may.
Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, clarify.
So
if you wish to leave, you may.
Okay, so we're dismissed. Is that correct?
If you wish to leave, you may leave.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You're wasting your time. Don't remember you have a foreign dignitary in your office.
I would just say that the previous when the Republicans, they did not treat the Secretary of the Treasury this way. So if this is the way you want to treat me, then I'll rethink whether I voluntarily come back here to testify, which I've offered to do.
Mr. Secretary, I want you to know that no other secretary has ever told us the day before that they were going to limit their time in the way that you're doing. So if you want to use them as examples, you have acted differently, and they have acted, and as I have said, if you wish to leave, you may.
If you'd wish to keep me here so that I don't have my important meeting and continue to grill me, then we can do that. I will cancel my meeting, and I will not be back here. I will be very clear. That's the way you'd like to have this relationship.
Thank you. The gentleman, the secretary, has agreed to stay to hear all of the rest of the members.
Okay,
Please
so
cancel your meeting and respect our time. Who is next on the list?
My foreign meeting. You're instructing me to stay here, and I should cancel.
No, you just made me an offer.
No, I didn't make you an offer.
You made me an offer that I accepted.
I did not make you an offer. Just let's be clear. You're instructing me. You are ordering me to stay here.
No, I'm not ordering you. I'm responding. Okay. I said you may leave anytime you want. And you said, okay. If that's what you want to do, I'll cancel my appointment and I'll stay here. So I'm responding to your request. If that's what you want to do.
That's not what I want to do. I told you.
What would you like to do?
What I've told you is I thought it was respectful that you'd let me leave at 5:15.
You are free to leave anytime you want. You may go
well then,
anytime
please,
you want.
Please dismiss everybody. I believe you're supposed to take the gravel and bang it. That's
Please do not instruct me as to how I'm to conduct this committee.
WIGO AM 1570, Atlanta's Incredible Radio. Thanks for tuning in for hour 2 of Voice of Dissent with Sounds from the Underground. I love that clip. That was Auntie Maxine schooling Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and I just thought that was hilarious. She said that he could leave. She gave him what he wanted, and he didn't know what he wanted. But anyway, that was hilarious. Some people have a hard time dealing with the power of and leadership of women, especially black women, right? He did not like. He just couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle it. Maxine put him in check. All right. So, all right. Well, all right. Here we go. All right, folks. We're gonna recap this week's headlines, the rest of this week's headlines, and then we're gonna finish up with the show. It was some great Noam Chomsky clips, and of course, yours truly will let you know about the upcoming events and actions this week, since Brittany is at a family funeral. And then we'll be joined with Lisa and all the crew of Extinction Rebellion towards the end of the show. So that's what's coming up. Please stick around. All right, let's recap the headlines. All right. New York City declares public health emergency over measles outbreak. BuzzFeed, GOP told drug companies not to comply with congressional request. Prosecutors add money laundering charges in school admissions scheme. Trump executive orders aim to facilitate approval on pipeline projects. Spring temperatures in Alaska 20 degrees above normal. Congress holds white nationalism hearing. Online commoners unleash flood of hate speech. New Zealand bans assault weapons week after Christchurch massacre. British police arrest WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. In Sudan, military overthrows President al-Bashir after months of protests. Dems demand evidence after AG Barr tells senators FBI spied on Trump campaign. And that's William Barr, the same guy that helped cover up Iran-Contra. So that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. ICE acting director leaves post in ongoing purge of immigration officials. Politico, Trump considering ex-head of hate group for DHS role. Dems introduce bill to reverse Trump's Muslim and anti-refugee bans. In Israel, Netanyahu declares victory as government moves further to the right. In India, elections kick off as Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Modi seeks second term. In the EU, leaders extend Brexit deadline to October 31st. In Louisiana, suspect arrested over fires at 3 black churches. And he was the son of the sheriff. House Democrats pass net neutrality bill, but Senate fate remains bleak. Bernie Sanders unveils revamped Medicare for all. Julian Assange's lawyers vow to fight his extradition to the United States. Ecuadorian ex-president criticizes successor for allowing Assange to be arrested. Trump claims I know nothing about WikiLeaks despite praising site repeatedly in 2016. Sudanese protesters denounce military rule, call for civilian government. White House pushed plan to send migrants to sanctuary cities to punish Democrats. Official who compared family detention centers to summer camps set to become head of ICE. More offshore drilling feared as Senate confirms ex-oil lobbyist to head Interior. Amazon, Netflix, IBM, Chevron paid no federal taxes in 2018 despite billions in profits. Senator Elizabeth Warren unveils real corporate profits tax to force big companies to pay fair share. BDS movement co-founder Omar Baghoudi denied entry to the United States. A video, police filmed dragging teen down flight of stairs and tasering her at Chicago High School. Georgetown students vote to create slavery reparations fund. And 31,000 workers at Stop and Shop launch strike. That wraps up the recap of this week's headlines. And let's go ahead and get started with the show. The show.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Boston. Today, we spend the hour with Noam Chomsky. We visited his hometown of Boston this week, where he's a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for more than 50 years. He now teaches at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Over 700 people packed into the Old South Church Thursday to hear the world-renowned dissident and father of modern linguistics speak about threats to democracy. From the issue of Israel-Palestine to the arrest of Julian Assange, from nuclear war to climate change. After viewing part of a new film about him called Internationalism or Extinction, Noam Chomsky talked about the past 2 years under President Trump.
I'd like to start with a brief reminiscence of a period which is eerily similar to today in many unpleasant respects. I'm thinking of exactly 80 years ago, almost to the day, happened to be the moment of the first article that I remember having written on political issues. Easy to date, it was right after the fall of Barcelona in February 1939. The article was about what seemed to be the inexorable spread of fascism over the world. 1938, Austria had been annexed by Nazi Germany. A few months later, Czechoslovakia was betrayed and placed in the hands of the Nazis at the Munich conference. In Spain, one city after another was falling to Franco's forces. February 1939, Barcelona fell. That was the end of the Spanish Republic. The remarkable popular revolution, anarchist revolution of 1936, 37, 38 had already been crushed by force. It looked as if fascism was going to spread without end. It's not exactly what's happening today, but we can borrow Mark Twain's famous phrase, history doesn't repeat, but sometimes rhymes. Too many similarities to overlook. When Barcelona fell, there was a huge flood of refugees from Spain. Most went to Mexico, about 40,000. Some went to New York City, established anarchist offices in Union Square, secondhand bookstores, and down 4th Avenue. That's where I got my early political education, roaming around that area. That's 80 years ago. Now it's today. We didn't know at the time, but the U.S. government was also beginning to think about how the spread of fascism might be virtually unstoppable. But they didn't view it with the same alarm that I did as a 10-year-old. I now know that the attitude of the State Department was rather mixed regarding what the significance of the Nazi movement was. Actually, there was a consul in Berlin, U.S. consul in Berlin, who was sending back pretty mixed comments about the Nazis, suggesting maybe they're not as bad as everyone says. He stayed there until Pearl Harbor Day, when he was withdrawn. Famous diplomat named George Kennan. Not a bad indication of the mixed attitude towards these developments. It turns out, couldn't have known it at the time, but shortly after this, 1939, the State Department and the Council on Foreign Relations began to carry out planning about the post-war world. What would the post-war world look like? And in the early years, right about that time, next few years, they assumed that the post-war world would be divided between a German-controlled world, Nazi-controlled world, most of Eurasia, and a U.S.-controlled world, which would include the Western Hemisphere, the former British Empire, which the U.S. would take over, and parts of the Far East, and that would be the shape of the post-war world. Those views, we now know, were maintained until the Russians turned the tide. Stalingrad, 1942, the huge tank battle at Kursk a little later, made it pretty clear that the Russians would defeat the Nazis. The planning changed, picture of the post-war world changed, went on to what we've seen for the last period since that time. Well, that was 80 years ago. Today, we are not facing the rise of anything like Nazism, but we are facing the spread of what's sometimes called an ultra-nationalist, reactionary international, trumpeted openly by its advocates, including Steve Bannon, the impresario of the movement, just had a victory yesterday. The Netanyahu election in Israel solidified the reactionary alliance that's being established, all of this under the U.S. aegis, run by the triumvirate Trump, Pompeo, Bolton, triumvirate. Could borrow a phrase from George W. Bush to describe them, but out of politeness I won't. The Middle East alliance consists of the extreme reactionary states of the region, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt under the most brutal dictatorship of its history, Israel right at the center of it, confronting Iran, severe threats that we're facing in Latin America, the election of Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil put in power the most extreme, most outrageous of the right-wing ultranationalists who are now plaguing the hemisphere. Yesterday, Lenin Moreno of Ecuador took a strong step towards joining the far-right alliance by expelling Julian Assange from the embassies, picked up quickly by the U.S., will face a very dangerous future unless there's a significant popular protest. Mexico is one of the rare exceptions in Latin America to these developments. This has happened in Western Europe. The right-wing parties are growing, some of them very frightening in character. There is a counter-development. Yanis Varoufakis, the former finance minister of Greece, very significant, important individual, along with Bernie Sanders, have urged the formation of a progressive international to counter the right-wing international that's developing. At the level of states, the balance looks overwhelmingly in the wrong direction. But states aren't the only entities. At the level of people, it's quite different. And that could make the difference. That means a need to protect the functioning democracies, to enhance them, to make use of the opportunities they provide for the kinds of activism that have led to significant progress in the past, could save us in the future.
Back with Professor Noam Chomsky in Boston in half a minute. We continue the hour with world-renowned linguist, political dissident Noam Chomsky, who spoke last night here in Boston at the Old South Church.
I want to make a couple of remarks below about the severe difficulty of maintaining and instituting democracy, the powerful forces that have always opposed it, the achievements of somehow salvaging and enhancing it, and the significance of that for the future. But first, a couple of words about the challenges that we which you heard enough about already and you all know about. I don't have to go into them in detail. To describe these challenges as extremely severe would be an error. The phrase does not capture the enormity of the kinds of challenges that lie ahead, and any serious discussion of the future of humanity must begin by recognizing a critical fact that the human species is now facing a question that has never before arisen in human history, a question that has to be answered quickly. Will human society survive for long? Well, as you all know, for 70 years we've been living under the shadow of nuclear war. Those who've looked at the record can only be amazed that we've survived this far. Time after time, it's come extremely close to terminal disaster, even minutes away. It's kind of a miracle that we've survived. Miracles don't go on forever. This has to be terminated, and quickly. The recent nuclear posture review of the Trump administration dramatically increases the threat of conflagration, which would in fact be terminal for the species. We may remember that this nuclear review was sponsored by Jim Mattis, who was regarded as too civilized to be retained in the administration. It gives you a sense of what can be tolerated in the Trump, Pompeo, Bolton world. Well, there were three major arms treaties. The ABM Treaty, Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, the INF Treaty, Intermediate Nuclear Forces, the New START Treaty. The U.S. pulled out of the ABM Treaty in 2002, and anyone who believes that anti-ballistic missiles are defensive weapons is deluded about the nature of these systems. The U.S. has just pulled out of the INF Treaty, established by Gorbachev and Reagan in 1987, which sharply reduced the threat of war in Europe, which had very quickly spread. The background of that signing of that treaty was the demonstrations that you just saw depicted on the film. Massive public demonstrations were the background for leading to a treaty that made a very significant difference. Worth remembering that in many other cases where significant popular activism has made a huge difference. The lessons are too obvious to enumerate. Well, the Trump administration has just withdrawn from the INF Treaty. The Russians withdrew right afterwards. If you take a close look, you find that each side has a kind of a credible case saying that the opponent has not lived up to the treaty. For those who want a picture of how the Russians might look at it, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, the major journal on arms control issues, had a lead article a couple of weeks ago by Theodore Postel pointing out how dangerous the U.S. installations of anti-ballistic missiles on the Russian border, how dangerous they are can be perceived to be by the Russians. Notice on the Russian border how the tensions are mounting on the Russian border. Both sides are carrying out provocative actions. In a rational world, what would happen would be negotiations between the two sides with independent experts to evaluate the charges that each is making against the other to lead to a resolution of these charges, restore the treaty. That's a rational world, but it's unfortunately not the world we're living in. No efforts at all have been made in this direction, and they won't be unless there is significant pressure. Well, that leaves the New START Treaty. The New START Treaty has already been designated by the figure in charge, who has modestly described himself as the greatest in American history. He gave it the usual designation of anything that was done by his predecessors, the worst treaty that ever happened in human history. We've got to get rid of it. If, in fact, this comes up for renewal right after the next election, and a lot is at stake. A lot is at stake in whether that treaty will be renewed. It has succeeded in very significantly reducing the number of nuclear weapons to a level way above what they ought to be, but way below what they were before, and it could go on. Well, meanwhile, global warming proceeds on its inexorable course. During this millennium, every single year, with one exception, has been hotter than the last one. There are recent scientific papers, James Hansen and others, which indicate that the pace of global warming, which has been increasing since about 1980, may be sharply escalating and may be moving from linear growth to exponential growth, which means doubling every couple of decades. We're already approaching the conditions of 125,000 years ago, when the sea level was about roughly 25 feet higher than it is today with the rapid melting of the Antarctic huge ice fields. That point might be reached. The consequences of that are almost unimaginable. I mean, I won't even try to depict them. You can figure out quickly what that means. Well, meanwhile, while this is going on, you regularly read in the press euphoric accounts of how the United States is advancing in fossil fuel production. It's now surpassed Saudi Arabia. We're in the lead of fossil fuel production. The big banks, JP Morgan Chase and others, are pouring money into new investments in fossil fuels, including the most dangerous, like Canadian tar sands. This is all presented with great euphoria, excitement. We're now reaching energy independence. We can control the world. The use of fossil fuels in the world. Barely a word on what the meaning of this is, which is quite obvious. It's not that the reporters, commentators don't know about it, that the CEO of the banks don't know about it. Of course they do. But these are kind of institutional pressures that just are extremely hard to extricate themselves from. You can put yourself in try to put yourself in the position of say the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, the biggest bank, which is spending large sums in investment in fossil fuels. He certainly knows everything that you all know about global warming. It's no secret. But what are the choices? It basically has two choices. One choice is to do exactly what he's doing. The other choice is to resign and be replaced by somebody else who'll do exactly what he's doing. It's not an individual problem. It's an institutional problem, which can be met, but only under tremendous public pressure. And we've recently seen very dramatically how the solution can be reached. A group of young people, Sunrise Movement, organized, got to the point of sitting in congressional offices, aroused some interest from the new progressive figures who were able to make it to Congress under a lot of popular pressure. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, joined by Ed Markey, actually placed the Green New Deal on the agenda. That's a remarkable achievement. Of course, it gets hostile attacks from everywhere. It doesn't matter. A couple of years ago, it was unimaginable that it would be discussed. As a result of the activism of this group of young people, it's now right in the center of the agenda. It's got to be implemented in one form or another. It's essential for survival, maybe not in exactly that form, but some modification of it. Tremendous change achieved by the commitment of a small group of young people. That tells you the kind of thing that can be done. Meanwhile, the doomsday clock of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists last January was set at 2 minutes to midnight. That's the closest it's been to terminal disaster since 1947. The announcement of the settlement of the setting mentioned the two major familiar threats. The threat of nuclear war, which is increasing, the threat of global warming, which is increasing further, and it added a third for the first time, the undermining of democracy. That's the third threat, along with global warming and nuclear war. And that was quite appropriate, because functioning democracy offers the only hope of overcoming these threats. They're not going to be dealt with by major institutions, state or private, acting without massive public pressure, which means that the means of democratic functioning have to be kept alive, used the way the Sunshine Movement did it, the way the great mass demonstration in the early 80s did it, and the way we continue today.
Back with Noam Chomsky in conversation in 30 seconds.
That was worldwide, internationally known linguist, dissident, Noam Chomsky, author of over 100 books. If you want to hear the rest of that interview with Amy Goodman, you can go to democracynow.org, where he delves into how Trump interfered with the Israeli elections and also touches on the arrest of Julian Assange. Great interview, though. democracynow.org. All right, we're going to go ahead and play a few ads, and we'll be joined with Extinction Rebellion Atlanta. Extinction Rebellion Atlanta, preparing for the international rebellion on the 15th. Stick around.
Most of these pipelines are going through indigenous lands. Everywhere you walk.
People are signing and taking initiative to really stop this pipeline.
Despite what's going on in the courts, just like what happened at Dakota Access Pipeline, these companies will stop at nothing.
Anytime something like this happens, it's a good thing for now. But we also know that the struggle continues. We fought the fossil fuel industry in the Black Hills back in the late 70s, early 80s. They always come back because it's greed.
It's all about dollars. They don't care about anything else. And they're going to push through. But we've got to be mobilized and we have to be ready.
As Indigenous people, it is our duty and our sacred right to protect the land and the water because the water was our first medicine.
We're the caretakers of Mother Earth, so that's what we do. Take care of her as best as we can, you know.
The oil pipelines, they break, and it's going to pollute the land where nothing can grow.
It's a struggle for everybody. We all got to drink water. We all got to breathe the air.
I ask that you join us. You join our fight.
I learned over the years of struggle with the American Indian movement, it's always been a land struggle and with the power of allies. And that's what we're asking, for people to just continue to join with us.
Keep in touch with those that are on the ground fighting this pipeline, because a lot of us that we do this, we don't get paid to do this. We just do it with what we have.
Come stand and do what's right for not only Indigenous people, but for all life.
If that comes to you from in here, then go with it. There's a reason why you feel that way. And go with it if you're able to go with it. Just go and find out.
Are you tired of being targeted and harassed by police? Do you believe that our communities need resources and services, not more jails and prisons? Do you imagine an Atlanta where all black and brown folks are treated with respect and dignity and have opportunities to grow and thrive? If you have been arrested, incarcerated, harassed, or profiled by the Atlanta Police Department, or been pressured by private misdemeanor probation companies for fees and fines you can't afford, you do not have to to be silenced any longer. Bring your voice, your story, and your expertise to the Solutions Not Punishment Coalition of the Racial Justice Action Center based in East Point, Georgia. Meet us at the Philip Rush Center at 1530 DeKalb Avenue on February 24th at 6 p.m. to experience the SNAP Coalition family. Please visit our website at rjactioncenter.org or contact our offices at 404-458-6904. That's 404-458-6904.
It's time we talk about Black Lives Matter in Atlanta. Did you know on March 9, 2015, Anthony Hill, a 27-year-old unarmed Air Force veteran, was killed by DeKalb County Police? Did you also know the same month that Walter Scott was shot in South Carolina and Freddie Gray was killed in Baltimore, Alexio Christian was killed right here by APD in Atlanta? It's time we talk about the issues that we face here in the South, and the time is now. We are living in a movement. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. If you would like to be involved, please find us on Facebook at Black Lives Matter Atlanta or text to 404-956-7878.
Did you know Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a socialist? The Democratic Socialists of America continue to fight for real democracy, where society and the economy work to serve human needs, not just make profits for a few, where all people, not corporations, have free speech and decide elections. We are an organization of activists, not a party. Find out more about the Metro Atlanta Democratic Socialists of America at dsa-atlanta.org. That's dsa-atlanta.org.
If prohibition worked, I would be all for it. But it hasn't, and it won't. And we can't arrest our way out of this. Each year, 40,000 Georgians are arrested, incarcerated, and stigmatized for marijuana offenses. 1 in 3 young people will be arrested for a nonviolent drug offense before they turn 23. Let's quit labeling our youth as criminals. It's time to talk. Peachtree Normal, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and concerned parents invite the public to join the conversation about a logical approach to marijuana law reform in Georgia. It's time to talk. Find us at www.peachtreenormal.org.
Peachtree Normal is a proud affiliate of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Our fight against climate change is a battle over power. But not only the kind of power that runs our cars or keeps our buildings warm. We need to take back the power that the fossil fuel industry has over society. Fossil fuel companies are the wealthiest and most powerful corporations on the planet, and their core business model threatens all of us. For decades, they have corrupted our governments, ravaged our planet, and treated the atmosphere like an open sewer, while the impacts of climate change devastate the people who've done the least to cause the problem. We believe in a sustainable and prosperous future, which is socially just and economically fair. Our mission is to inspire, train, and mobilise people to bring power back to citizens and create a thriving global movement. To put the heat on the fossil fuel industry, drive our leaders to act, and create the climate solutions the world needs. We will confront the power of the fossil fuel industry, dismantling their social licence and stopping their projects on the ground. We will also continue to work locally with communities affected, supporting those responding to climate disasters and working to promote investment towards community-based sustainable initiatives and renewable energy projects. We will keep targeting and pressuring local and national governments to take action on reducing emissions. But we need everybody. No matter where you live, there are ways to plug in. Whether it's joining our campaigns online, organising for climate action in your community, or joining a mass mobilisation to move beyond fossil fuels and to a clean energy future. There's room for everyone in this growing movement. Together, we can create a new kind of power. Join us.
at 350.org. That's 350.org. All right, I'm glad to be joined with Lisa from Extinction Rebellion Atlanta. Lisa, are you there?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for calling the show. I checked. I seen your action this past week at the Public Service Commission meeting. That was a great action.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're gathered now with your other comrades of Extinction Rebellion Atlanta. Why don't you tell our audience who Extinction Rebellion is? Because I know that it started in England with large numbers of actions of people doing civil disobedience and nonviolence actions. So talk about it, because it's spread around the world, and now there is a chapter here in Atlanta, and you're a part of it. So why don't you just talk about a little bit about the organization, and talk about this upcoming action, this international action that's happening on the 15th, and then feel free to go ahead and after you intro, you can pass the mic around to your comrades so we can hear their take on the upcoming action and just what we're up against with the climate crisis.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So, Extinction Rebellion is an international movement. Like you said, it started in England. And the goal is actually to mobilize a worldwide mass disruption of using civil disobedience and nonviolent direct action to basically stop business as usual and demand immediate action by the government and the corporations and all of the powers and the systemic issues to respond to the climate crisis. Because basically we are at a point where the normal methods of political action are insufficient. We need much faster action. And the reality is that the government, the corporations, all of the things in power are in fact not just ignoring this issue, but they're driving us farther to it. I was just reading this morning how, the current president is saying we're going to put more money into coal. So they're actually pushing us toward this, making this issue worse and worse. And the climate crisis, we're already in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. And we are at the point where it's looking more and more likely that humans could be victims of this extinction. Like, we're not concerned anymore. I mean, we are concerned about the extinction of all the other species on this planet, but we're actually afraid for the extinction of the human race. And so the core idea of Extinction Rebellion is that when the government is doing something, actively taking action that is causing such harm to the people, that they have broken the social contract, and it becomes not just our right, but even our moral duty to rebel. So we are mobilizing an international, worldwide rebellion against the governments that are exacerbating the climate crisis. A nonviolent rebellion of, like I said, civil disobedience and disrupting business as usual to demand immediate change. And next week is the International Rebellion Week, so there's going to be actions all over the world. I just found out today, actually, the hashtag is going to be Rebel Spring here in the U.S. So if you want to follow that on social media, then you can watch all the actions that are going to be happening all week long.
Yeah, and I'll just remind folks that since the Industrial Revolution began, we pumped over a trillion tons of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. It's stuck there for millennia. It's warming the planet, and right now, we're at 411 parts per million. When the Industrial Revolution began, we were at 280. We're up to 411. We're gaining 3 to 4 parts per million every year. And climate scientist James Hansen said that once we hit 450, we could have irreversible, cataclysmic climate change. So we are on our way. Like the IPCC report, we have 11 years to cut our emissions in half, or we'll hit 1.5 degrees, which could basically destabilize ice sheets. The coral reefs are in a terminal state. They are the base of the food chain in the ocean. There's just so many tipping points that we're approaching now. So what you're doing is extremely honorable, and we just really appreciate what you're doing. So continue on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thank you. No, that's really important. I think it's really important, too, for people to recognize a lot of people don't know about these tipping points, but, like, we really are so close to a point where this planet is not going to be livable. We're not just talking about the stuff we're already seeing. We're not just talking about wildfires in California. We're not just talking about cataclysmic sea level rise. We're actually talking about the air becoming unbreathable and
not being able to grow food. Not being able to grow food. That's important. Water scarcity.
Food shortages. We're already seeing this migrant crisis is actually a climate crisis. A lot of it, you know, we're already seeing climate refugees. Anyway,
we were just talking about Mozambique earlier. Got hit with the strongest cyclone that Africa has ever seen in Southeast Africa. Displaced right now, 1.7 million people are displaced. Then Iran. Over half the country is flooded. And we got Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri. Then the wildfires from California, the hurricanes that we had, Irma, Puerto Rico, where thousands of people died. Then North Carolina, South Carolina, Houston hit with the worst flood, 5 feet of rain within 48 hours. I mean, so people are waking up. Climate change is not something that's just off in the distant future. You don't have to worry about it. It's happening now.
Right, exactly. It's not even our children's lifetimes, it's our lifetimes. It's right now. So we're a new group here in Atlanta for Extinction Rebellion. So we just had our first action last week, and we targeted Georgia Power because Georgia Power's electricity generating plants are one of the biggest causes of emissions for the city of Atlanta, of climate-causing emissions. And, one of the big issues, I think, with the climate crisis for a long time, there's been all this messaging. We were just talking about this in our meeting. There's been all this messaging of, like, individual change, you know? You got to stop driving a car and ride a bike as an individual, you know? You got to turn your lights off, all of these little things. And the reality
it's not going to be sufficient enough.
It's insufficient. We have to hold the corporations and the governments that are causing the big picture, that are really the ones driving all of this. We have to hold them accountable. So that was what our action was about, was really just putting some more pressure on Georgia Power, because they are currently doing their long-term plan for electricity for Georgia, and they're like, oh, it has some solar in it, so that's good enough, and it's not good enough.
I read an article that said that basically it kind of their decision is locking us into probably another 20 years of still using coal.
Right. Exactly.
It's just unbelievable.
Unacceptable.
It's totally unacceptable. It's just unbelievable that these people are making decisions. They're going to be gone, and then, a lot of these older folks are going to be gone in another 10 or 15 years, 20 years. They're not going to be here. It's their kids and their grandchildren. It's just unbelievable that they don't even have a conscience or care about their own children and their future. It's just sickening. So is there anybody there, anybody else want to share?
Yeah. We have a couple people here.
We got about 4 minutes, so tell them to go ahead and knock out about 30 seconds to a minute each, depending on how many people are there.
Okay, yeah. And what do you want people to talk about? Just like
they can just come from the heart and just talk. Just basically why they've decided to be willing to do civil disobedience and sacrifice their own liberty and free. What brought them to be a part of Extinction Rebellion.
All right, cool. Just talk about what brought you to be part of Extinction Rebellion. Okay, here we go.
Hello, Gilbert. I'm with Extinction Rebellion. So what I want to talk about today is kind of what Lisa was talking about, where we're told all the time that it's about the individual changes, the little stuff, turning off your water, turning off the lights. And that doesn't really change these bigger picture stuff, like how 190 corporations are responsible for the majority of carbon emissions, or how so much of this stuff isn't within our control, and so many tipping points may have already happened. And I think what's important to know is that we have to organize on a major level. And you can hear about a lot of this stuff, and you can feel really hopeless and feel like nothing that you do matters. But that's not true. Even though those individual changes don't really matter that much, if you can have strength in numbers, and if you can get together, and if you can rebel against all of these things that are happening, you can make a change. And Extinction Rebellion is a way of doing that. And that's why I'm with it, because I don't want to go gentle into that good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Hi. We find ourselves in a situation where human beings are facing an existential threat. And all of the people that we've placed in leadership,
are
they
failing.
don't care. They'd rather sit on their cushy couches and drive their Lexuses and lie to their kids and act like life is going to keep moving when they know in a few generations those very same children they look at are going to suffer. There's going to be shortages of water, shortages of food. There's going to be a mass immigration crisis, a real crisis, not this BS that they're claiming at the border right now.
150 million climate refugees are expected by 2050. That's just 30 years away. And possibly by the end of the century, 1 million to 2 billion climate refugees. And potentially destabilize ice sheets and eventually 200 feet of melted water. It is just unbelievable the amount of neglect and people who have put their heads in the ground and are willing to sacrifice their own children's future. We really thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Next up.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show. Tell us why you're a part of Extinction Rebellion and just why you got involved with it, why you feel it's such an urgent situation.
All right. Well, I mean, it's to me, it's self-evident that it is an urgent situation because we're witnessing the breakdown of all the life support systems on Earth simultaneously, and all of these things are happening in accelerating ways. And just because the media downplays it, or the collective culture just sort of ignores it or becomes acclimated to it. There's this shifting baseline syndrome where we don't even recognize what we've lost because we just assume that a summer without fireflies is normal now, or whatever. But if we're honest with ourselves and if we pay attention, it's really clear that, life is blinking out all around us. And I believe that when we do go with the flow and just pretend that that's not happening because that's, nobody wants to hear about it, people try to make you seem like you're crazy if you bring this stuff up, but that's what makes us crazy is, I'm sorry to use ableist language, but that's how I feel is, that it's good for my sanity to get with some people who are not lying to each other and not lying to ourselves and are acknowledging the scale of the threat and at least trying to imagine what a truly appropriate, adequate response to that would be, and then confronting the systems that are in place that prevent us from shifting into a truly regenerative way of life. I don't believe that anything we do at this point is ever going to be enough, but I believe that there is a huge difference between where we're at now, what we're doing now, where we're moving in the wrong direction at an ever-increasing speed, and what we could do if we were to make a rapid shift into
sustainable
moving beyond
the
ideology of industrial civilization.
Exactly. Hey, we only got about 20 seconds. Could you give the contact information for Extinction Rebellion?
I'm gonna put.
And hey Lisa, give the contact information for Extinction Rebellion and where people can learn about this upcoming event.
Yep, xratlanta.org.
One more time.
xratlanta.org. And we will be doing an action this Wednesday. So check out that space. Also, our Facebook page is XR Atlanta. We'll have an event there.
All right, appreciate it. Keep up the great work. We only got about 10 seconds. Have a good weekend. Thanks for coming on the show. Keep up the great work.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right, peace. That was Extinction Rebellion Atlanta. We have about 20. We have until 2050 to completely get off of fossil fuels and make the transition. They're out in the streets doing the work. We appreciate them. If you want to hear the archive of this hour, go to voicesofdissent.org, voicesofdissent.org, or the Georgia Coalition to End the New Jim Crow on Facebook. Everybody have a great weekend. Peace.